Assalamu alaikum. It's Saira Hayati back here at Malaysia Gazette with some unfiltered topics to talk about. Before we get into the real nitty-gritties, this is the final one. If you followed me up until now, this is the last one where I'm just going to give you some opinions on how me, British Pakistani, is sitting here in Malaysia talking to you. And hopefully what I'm going to give you is food for thought, really, by the experiences that I've had and now the observations. So why not kick off with women? And I'm sure that this topic could go on forever, but I'm going to give you some insights of the world in the UK for women, and let's see what your thoughts are on how they compare to you and your life here as a Malaysian woman. So let me tell you what I've observed as an overview. I have noticed that things as silly as a woman on a scooter. Now, that might sound the norm to you, but it isn't where I come from. Women, you do not really see a Western, British, Pakistani, or Asian woman on a scooter driving around the town. Scooters, I guess, aren't a thing in the UK that heavily, or motorbikes, not as much as they are here. They're becoming. And maybe they will become more. But right now, they're just not a thing. So that was a real thing for me to see. And when my brother saw it as well, he was like, oh, my God, look, there's a gang of girls out on their scooters off to enjoy themselves. And it was quite funny to see. But apart from that, I have engaged with quite a few women in this short space of time, ranging from high positions in politics, university lecturers, medical graduates, housewives, and it's been an interesting experience. So women here have something that the Western women don't possess, if you ask me, and I'm sure that plenty will agree with that. Women here still maintain their femininity. The trouble with the UK is women liberated, women wanted to go to work, women's votes, women's rights, women are not oppressed, women have freedom, women can do and say and go and be everything that they want to be. But what they don't realise is that they are weakened and are actually more controlled than the women in the East. Because Eastern women actually have more control. A Western woman will wear what she wears because she thinks she looks beautiful. She's got a great figure. Flaunt it. Why not put it out there? You look pretty. You are so beautiful. But who's put that thought in her head? If somebody said to her, you look beautiful in a hijab, you look beautiful in a whatever the cultural dress is, let's say an abaya. Actually, there's a grace, there is an elegance, there is femininity, there is beauty, there is attraction. What would that woman do? No doubt, in the right surroundings, and because everybody else is doing it, she will follow that way. And that's the problem in the West, is that women think that by showing who's looking, it's the men that are looking, they're the ones that are complimenting, they're the ones that are saying, you look very beautiful. Yeah, your girlfriends might say the same. And their impression is built on what their mindset is. And that mindset all comes from the same source, is what I'm saying. So think about it when you're doing what you're doing. And women here have definitely maintained that beauty, that charm, that charisma, that etiquette. And I've seen that not just, even despite them being in high profile positions, they still carry themselves beautifully, elegantly. And I think that should never, ever be lost. As a woman, don't lose that. Because when you lose that, you become masculine. You become alpha. There was a thing when I was growing, I used to get on with the boys better than the girls. And people would say, she's alpha female. I used to go to the gym. I used to lift weights. And they'd say, she's alpha female. I was a director. I was in charge. I was the boss. She's alpha female. But actually, I thought, now I've grown out of that period. I look back and I say, yeah, there was an alpha element. But actually, I wasn't. What I was just, I was kind of bringing out a part of my personality that exists in all women, and that is to we rise to the challenge, we'll fight the fight. If required, we will fight the fight. There is a warrior in all of us. However, the beauty that lies in a woman is greater than that position, and that position needs to be left to the old-fashioned rules of a man is a man and a woman is a woman, because that is, something that has to maintain itself. And there's a big reason for that, and there's a big reason for that structure and why that structure works. And so if I give you an example as a mother and a working woman in the UK, where the government actually encourages men and women to both work, and I see why that is a good thing. But there are negatives to that structure compared to this traditional structure of, man goes out to work, woman looks after the children if she gets married and has kids. And that's one structure. And the other one is where both of them are working and the children are going through schools or nurseries and after school clubs until, work is over. What I want to really emphasize on the fact is you don't realize that there is something that you are unable to give to your child that makes that person stronger, you could say. And that would be a woman has the ability to love differently. And when she gives that love to her child, the child has a attachment. And that attachment actually gives the child a strength. So when you don't have that bonding with your mother and you don't receive that love and the security that your mother is giving you by simply hugging you because she's got that time for you, because she wants you. And don't forget, I was talking about my relationship with my mother in the last show, and how I was constantly striving to please her. Why was I doing that? It was because I wanted her to be proud of me. I wanted her to be pleased with me, because following that proudness and that please comes love. And the best person to give that love is usually the woman. And a father can give it too, but the father still has that role of should be the head of the home, should be the provider, should be the protector, because he's stronger. And what I'm trying to explain to you is that in the UK, the trouble that's come from having that liberation and having that freedom and wanting to go to work and have the career, you can have that, but you have to sacrifice something for it. And my personal opinion, unfiltered, is don't have kids. If you cannot give that period of your life as biologically the mother, the woman, the nurturer, if you can't give that period wholly to that child, you're going to damage the child. The child will then be constantly looking for that kind of love. And sometimes they look for it in all the wrong places, and that's where relationships go wrong, especially females, because females are emotional creatures and, they give love, but they want a lot of loving as well. And if they have to feel like it just creates weaknesses. I'm not a relationship coach or anything, but I can just say from my what I've experienced in England, particularly with the working mums, is the struggles. Because in England, you have the same situation. Women finish work, they come home, and round two begins. The cooking begins, the cleaning begins, the bathing and nurturing and putting the kids to bed and feeding and the homework. All of that begins. Why does that burden fall on the woman? Why can that burden not be shared between the two of you? In the UK, my generation probably found that the women carried that burden more, and the next generation, you're finding that it's shared. And that is working. There is still a weakness, though. So even though you are both coming home from work and you are both sharing, it means the job gets done quicker, and it means that you're both able to give some of yourself to the child that you chose to bring into the world for your own, let's call it selfish reasons, because you wanted to have children and carry on with the traditions and what we've been taught growing up. But you have to remember that that responsibility comes first. And I know this may sound crazy coming from a woman who has been an entrepreneur and business and all of this, but this is my biggest advice that I can give you. As a woman, you must give your time to the child. If you are going to have children, spend that period of time, especially the first minimum 10 years, you have to engage with that child. After that age, you've laid the foundations, and the rest of it can be worked on. You've given them an emotional security and an emotional strength by being there lovingly as a mother, because all of that has a knock-on effect later on. And what you found in the UK is where the parents are both working, where they come home and they're then, relationship challenges are in there themselves, and he's doing this and she's doing that, and who's lost in between? It's the child that's lost in between, and they become detached. So those old-fashioned values of the child loving their parents and looking after their parents is disintegrating, and they grow up thinking that they're just going to get to a certain point and off they go and they're gone, and your children are no longer there. And I think that was a huge fear that I had with my children. I did not want to lose my kids to society, so I put my boys into an Islamic school. Darul London was convenient to my home. It probably was not the best. However, it was better than my children going to a Western school, because the trouble with Western schools is that there were a mixture of children, which you can respect everybody for their beliefs and practices, but as a whole, the Western world has moved on so fast and the damage is occurring to the kids. So I chose to put my children into non-secular schooling simply because the education system, as much as it used to be great, has now started to crumble. They're testing out topics. They're running experiments with children, giving them greater rights. And I don't deny that that's not a bad thing. Children should have rights. They should have a voice, and they should have parents who support them in bringing up that voice, because that's the next generation of entrepreneurs. That's the next generation of scientists, the next generation of that child is, if you're damaging the child from the beginning, you're not going to allow that child to become great in the future. So the trouble with the UK is the education system is crumbling, and there's no respect left for the teachers at all. You will be shocked at the kind of things that happen in schools with teachers. The whole home life system is crumbling because marriage isn't a formality. It's a formality in the UK. People have relationships, they'll have children, and then they'll have another relationship and they might have another child. Not saying that it's just married couples that, people divorce. It's not like it doesn't happen, but there's a strength in the old-fashioned traditions of marriage, and holding on to those is so important, because the UK is already past that stage. And actually what you're finding now is women want to be married. They want to have that commitment from the man. They want to be the wife. They want to be the mother. They don't want to be the career woman. Yes, they will educate, but they've recognized the damage to the generation. There is a generation in the UK who have experienced both parents working and they are detached. There is a huge social system. Children are leaving their parents' homes and are being put into state care because the parents are incapable of parenting, which is another skill they don't teach. In traditional values, the parenting is there, isn't it? The man is the man. He's role model in going out and being the provider, and the mother is the caregiver. That's a simple, traditional system that's proven in history that works. But westernized modern world, advancing, they call it that. What they don't realize is they've regressed. They've gone backwards. Because the children are actually very unstable because of that attachment issue. The children are confused because religion lacks in the UK. They're trying to push away religion, thinking that it's, a child has the right to choose what they want to be. And me I'm a Muslim. I grew up less Muslim. I became more Muslim, and that was through intellectual research myself and learning the better side. I was taught maybe old-fashioned, traditional, cultural aspect, and I grew to realize that it is the best thing that you can actually do in life is to follow a set of rules, because they give you strength. So what I'm saying is Islam gives you strength. If you want your child to be mentally strong, to have a direction, have a purpose, have a life, then you give them a set of rules. And Islam has the best set of rules that you could possibly give them. So my boys were given that. They're fine. Alhamdulillah, I'm happy with that. But there was a weakness. The weakness was I was working. So there was no mummy love. There was no mummy was busy. Mummy finished work late, 6 o'clock, got home 5:30, straight on to cooking food, straight on to trying to look after herself, look after the children, look after the home, look after the finances, everything, balancing, plates spinning. There is going to be a plate that drops and smashes. And I can tell you the only one that's going to drop and smash is the child, and that child's emotional state. When a child is emotionally strong, it is measurable, the difference between the emotionally nurtured child and the child that is not emotionally nurtured, because the less nurtured child has a weakness and they have a trauma. They have mental health issues that requires professional support and counselling to help them out of these thoughts that they have, because you don't know what anyone's thinking. You don't know what your child is thinking. Your child could be thinking, my mum doesn't love me. Actually, you love your child, but you couldn't because you didn't have enough hours in the day to deliver the emotional side that the child needs. So what I'm trying to say here is, without going too deep into the topic, be cautious that this lifestyle that you think that you want as a woman is, you can have it. You can have it at any point in your life. I am a living example of that. I can tell you I've stepped into all sorts of different roles, and because I am mentally strong, I have to say that my mother was, 6 kids, new country, and working. She didn't give that loving side that makes a difference to a child. And I then did the same, because my mother did it, and I was a firm, stern mother. I was less loving, whereas I have to say that probably the older 3 faced it more, and probably started to soften around my 4th child, and the 5th child's getting it all. She's getting all the love. She's getting all of the attention. And what does it do? I'll tell you what it does. It builds self-esteem. So my youngest, you will probably see more of her. She has a high self-esteem. She has a high value of herself. She has a different attitude, and that has a knock-on effect, and will do with her future and how she chooses and makes her choices. And I will help her with that. And I talk to her, even though she's only 8, I talk to her like she's an adult. What are your thoughts on this? That's okay. So let me tell you my side. We do things together that my other children didn't benefit from. We did. The older children did get some of my time, but when you're at work, you have annual leave. Sometimes kids are sick and you spend a bit of time. You will, if you relate to this, if you're a working mum, Your child is ill. So now you've got to tell the employer, I can't work today, my child's not well. And then you go home and you spend that time on the sofa with a poorly child. What does the poorly child want? The poorly child wants cuddles. And mum gives the cuddles. And the baby starts to feel better, or the child, or whatever their age may be. But what did you actually get from that? You enjoyed it. Don't deny that you didn't enjoy it. You enjoyed your child being poorly, so you could pause for a bit and you could sit on that sofa and you could just enjoy the maternal side of yourself and giving that love to your child. And you enjoyed it. And then, of course, child gets better, you go back to work and the cycle begins, and it's not going to change unless you make that change. So don't think that the Western ideology of this career path is the way forward, because I'll tell you that the what you receive from being a nice, loving, nurturing mother will be beneficial to that generation, and they'll be stronger mentally, self-esteem, all of it. And they will be the best that they can be because of it. And the outcome will be more preferred to the outcome that would be if you didn't do it that way, is what I'm saying. So I was looking at the observations, and the women here still have all of that. I still see all of that, and I think it's a really good thing. And don't lose track of it. Don't lose sight of it, thinking that this Western way is the forward, and the lifestyles that Western women have, you don't have. I can tell you that even in business, when I was running a business, people would come in. I was in charge. I looked like I was in charge, but if anybody came into that office, they would walk towards my male employee as that was the boss. Because it's a natural perception. They're not going to look at the woman and say, she's the boss, she's in charge. It'll be the man. And that's in the West. So don't think it's nothing to do with you living in this country or that country. It is actually you as a human being evolving and seeing things. And the rules that we've been taught, the old-fashioned ways, have been distorted by culture. I'll say that because I can say that growing up as a Pakistani child with Pakistani parents, even my mother actually, her origin is Afghanistan, and her mother's strict as. I can imagine my mother's mother. She was stern and strict. She delivered that to her daughter. Her daughter delivered that to her daughter. And her daughter has changed because the world has changed. You know, we have access to so much more information and we see so much more. So we don't have to make the same mistakes. We can learn from observing others. I came here, I observed you. You can actually observe what's happening in the world without actually having to live it and actually do it. And that's where I'm grateful that I'm here, but I'm also regretful to a degree that I didn't receive or I didn't give what a woman should give to her children, because the UK makes you that way as well. It does make you into that alpha because you don't have a choice. You know, the family structure's broken down over there anyway. The ones that have got good, strong family structures, the children are better. It's a fact. And actually making the right choices and right decisions boils back down to following your parents' instructions. If I didn't come from what was then a broken family that got forced, I wasn't forced, I was actually by choice, but how is it a choice when you're so young? 18 isn't really a choice. Married at a young age, had a child at a young age, and that kind of made me stronger. But I just think that if the stability was there in the family structure, I had two sisters older than me that went to university and got degrees, but I ended up self-teaching, because I had to divert off the path a little bit, you know, and then anybody below that. Actually, I went into business, and my siblings under me, 1, 2, 3 of them below me, because I'm middle child, they all went to business. They all did well. They turned out okay. But you know what? Where would that direction have been if the intelligence that we actually, all of us have got, was applied to an education, and that education would have lifted us to like the aspirations that we had, the desires. I think my desire was fashion design or architecture. I went into property because there seemed to be an underlying love for it. But I didn't do the architecture because life and culture took over. So where we are now is in a different world. So I don't want you to make the same mistakes, basically, is what I'm saying. And I'm hoping that, again, we're at that stage where there's a British perception giving you a viewpoint. And you can take that information and you can process it and you can do something with it. I do think that you have to reflect now that you're the generation that can make the change. Don't fall into the path that the West has fallen into, because the West is broken. The UK education system is crumbling. The medical system is crumbling. You think that it's a great place to be, but you don't realize that what you've got here is greater and better because you have still got culture. There is no culture in the UK. They don't know what culture is. And then when culture comes and hits them, it's an abnormality. And that's why they look at it negatively. And there's a huge negative energy about it. So my advice is, women, yes, educate. Yes, follow traditions. If you want that path and you want to get married and you want to have children, follow that path. But if you want to actually enter that working world, just think twice when you're having children, how many children you're going to have and whether you're going to be able to give enough of yourself to that child. Because a woman was made biologically, you know it because you want it yourself. You want love. You want to give love. That's why women are greater givers. So closing off really on today's topic, I'm just going to have to say that you have to use your own mind and have a moment to consider what you lived, what you've experienced, and how you're going to make things different. Take that moment to reflect and say to yourself, do you want a repeat of history or do you want to change history? And you can do that in your life, this life that you've got here, because this country is giving it to you. Women, trust me, you have a freedom. You have a culture. You have a set of rules. You have independence that surprisingly does not exist in the West, because you're combining everything. And over there's an emptiness that doesn't exist. And here you have that. And it's beautiful. I'm telling you, from my observations, it's beautiful. That is probably the end of today's show, and we could probably talk about it again at another point. But from me today, it's been a good conversation, and I'm sure that everybody's got opinions and thoughts about it. But from here onwards, the plan is to bring you some really good unfiltered content. So keep watching because it's about to get really interesting. So that's thank you and salam alaikum from me.